And 3, 2, 1. Hey, Patrick. How's it
How
going?
are you?
Great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Love to have you on here. So, good deal. Well, let's get started. So, for everyone that's watching that might not know you, Patrick is a really good friend of mine, and we met. How did we meet?
Through this, really, I mean, in this space, but I think probably the first time was at some event, one of the million that goes on in this industry. But yeah, I was lucky enough to get introduced to you pretty early on. I think probably first month I was in the industry.
Yeah, first month you were in the industry. I think it was a happy hour that we had at my office, and you came over. And we were talking.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
And we were chatting, and then you were wearing that watch actually.
Oh yes, that is right.
Yeah, and so
I was like extremely impressed that you knew. Yeah, you were like, what Cartier is that? And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, maybe first or second person ever that even recognized what it was. So yeah, I remember that. It was at your old office on 30.
Yep.
And you guys ordered B-dubs, and we ended up sitting there and having some waters till 2 a.m, I think.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was.
Some adult waters.
Definitely didn't get anyone in trouble that night. Love it. Awesome. So, Patrick, you are a title rep over at Barrister Title.
Mm-hmm.
So, for people who might not understand what that is, your job is to help, sellers with, making sure that their property is free and clear when they end up selling it, like the transfer of the actual ownership of the property.
Mm-hmm.
So, Patrick and I run in a lot of the same circles. We know a lot of the same people. We've known each other for at least 3 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 3 years. And yeah, we've done a lot of cool stuff together. So.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
Good deal. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on today was to talk about, you have a pretty, there's a detail, that's not the word I'm looking for, intricate background, right? You've done a lot of different things in your life, from what we've talked about. And you've had a lot of different, really cool things that you've done, right? So I want to talk about that kind of for people that are coming out of school, starting their career, right? You were, remind me, because I don't want to butcher it here on the podcast. What was the official title you had at Chase when you ended up walking away from that career path?
So the initial job that I had that I don't know that many people know about was I worked at a casino.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
First, was that maybe 2 years after I graduated from Purdue, and then eventually that lifestyle is not sustainable, if you will. I wasn't. I didn't see myself working 8:30 at night till 4:30 in the morning for a long period of time.
Right.
Or 3 to 11s for that matter. So when I went to Chase, I had actually interviewed there before I went to work at the casino. It was Bank One at the time, and they just took a while to call me back, and I took a job in the interim. But started there as a banker. When I finished there, it was, I can't remember the exact job title, but it was running branches, different branches.
Yeah, because you were in charge of a region, right?
That would have been in Fort Wayne when I left.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Right, when I left Indiana, around here, I was running the Cherville branch on 30 and over by Alameda.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So how did you progress through, that career path, right? What are some tips for people that are, maybe starting, their career, right? And they want to work up to a certain, level inside of an organization?
So, excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. I think that the most important thing when you're starting somewhere, especially somewhere that is big corporate environment, right, is understanding what the corporate environment is.
Right.
Okay. It's not. It took me a very long time to learn that it's not just how good you are at something that gets you to move to the next level, right? There's a game to this. There's a cap to this, and if you don't understand the situation that you're in and the powers at play, it can become very difficult to move up. So when I started with Chase, I started as a banker. So, I mean, I got my licenses very, very early, like you're 16 or 63 and so on and so forth. So I was kind of at the point where I'm thinking, man, I'm just going to kill this and I'll be the next Jamie Dimon, right?
Right.
And I was fortunate enough to be around some people early in my finance career that were extremely intelligent and very helpful and always open to, giving me tips and how to think about certain things in certain lights, and began to really settle into that role and became one of the top, producing bankers in Indiana, or at least the region and
Sure.
whatever. So, was able to find some success there, but it really was when Chase acquired Washington Mutual that things kind of changed for me in a career path, because they chose me to go out to California to train other bankers from Washington Mutual that were now becoming, Chase bankers, and they had no idea at all what was going on. So they sent, I think, one person from every region, like out to California somewhere. So I was in Pasadena for, I think, 2 weeks. And I was at one of their branches that had like 60 bankers. And I found myself really dug in on like teaching these guys and girls like what it is, how to do it, how to talk about certain things, because they just weren't used to it.
Right.
To be honest, they were kind of slinging mortgages, 2-day close kind of things,
Right.
and they were making tons of money. And obviously, we all know how that.
Right, because this was like right after 2008, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it was actually, this was, I don't know if it was 2008. I think it was around 2008 that happened. And, they're talking to me, oh, we do this and we do that and we make this much. And I'm like, this is why, this is why we are in the position that we're in from an economic standpoint.
Right. And why their bank got acquired.
Right. There's a reason there's $60 billion of bad mortgages. Giving them out like Halloween candy.
Yeah.
But I got to the point where when I was there that I really started finding my groove and a lot of fulfillment in like the responses of those people that I was helping or teaching. Some of them were just figured out, but a lot of them were coming back and asking more questions and asking me to sit in on their appointments and so on and so forth. And I found that was really what motivated me to do even more than what I was already doing.
Right.
So when I came back, it was funny because I came back and I had been talking to my boss, who was the district manager at the time. And before I even said anything, she was like, so I want you to finish up these next month, your next month or two or whatever. And she's like, and then I want you to come join the management team. And I was like, okay. It didn't dawn on me that she saw what I saw. But it was pretty quick. So I think I was only a banker for about 2 years.
Wow.
And then went into running branches.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was fun.
Any like crazy stories from, your management side of things?
Oh man. Yeah. A sad story, actually. A guy came in one time and he'd asked to speak to the manager, and that's always like, oh boy, is this going to be, some type of fee situation, or why did my loan get approved, or something like this. But he had fallen victim to a real bad like fraud scheme. And this guy was probably 45 years old, had 30-40 grand in the bank, was he was comfortable and pretty successful dude. And he had gotten something for like a secret shopper position that he was kind of doing as a side hustle. And what it was these people would send you a check for like $1,000. You would go spend 300 of it, and then keep the rest or something. But somehow he had to use his own money, and then they would send these checks. And then it came back that 30 or 40 of these checks were all bouncing. And so he was spending all his own money and shipping it back to that company. Because I think it was actually, they sent him a certain amount of money. It wasn't a lot of common sense that he was using, but
Right.
but he would have to send back like the extra after he deposited in his account. So he was basically just sending them, $900 a day or a week.
Right.
And I think he had like $8 by the time he was done, and it was bad. I saw that guy; his life was in not good shape.
Yeah, that's tough, for sure.
There's a lot of that, man. There's a lot where people are going to try and, get anything that you can or anything that you have, in any means, by any means possible. It's just,
Yeah, it's definitely
kind of that.
Yeah, it gives you that ick feeling. Yeah, for sure. So, another thing I want to talk about too, right, is, more on like the financial literacy side, right? I don't think we've talked about a whole lot of that on this podcast. We've touched on it in some different episodes. But as far as, your background, right, there's a lot of basic things people can do to get started. You don't have to, a lot of people have the misconception that, I have to make $100,000 plus a year, right? I have to have 20 grand or more saved up, right, to start really investing or to start doing things that, are going to help further my financial success, right? So, what are some basic principles that somebody who's just starting, right, can look into, to help with, developing their net worth?
Well, the first thing I would say is don't allow the rules that other people have made or expectations other people have had for you or for themselves become your playbook.
Right.
After Chase, I was a wealth management advisor. I decided to go into, being a producer in that route and dealing with investing people's money and estate planning and things like that. And you begin to talk to people, and they all have, something like you just said, a different version of it, if you will. And we create these, I guess, speed bumps in the road that make us feel okay with not moving forward, right? Like, I need 20 grand before I start investing.
Right.
I need to buy 3 houses at a time if I'm going to be renting them because I want to be, there's so many things that, I have to do this before I do that. But it causes inaction, right? And the biggest, I think, downfall in this country today, for young people and for established people, is that they're following a set of rules that the rules don't have any basis in them. Right. So I've seen people be like, I only make this much, so I really don't have much to invest. It's really about taking the first step towards something.
Right.
It's like, if I want to lose 40 pounds, right, I'm not going to lose 40 pounds in a week. So a lot of times that's not going to make me just give up before I start if I really want to do it. Right. But financially, it's astounding how many people are like, I don't make millions, so I can't save nothing.
Right.
Where it could be something as easy as, something very simple, like set up an automatic transfer from your checking account to your savings account. Make it $50 a week or $50 every other week. And people will start to think, there's no way I'm always broke. Well, it's because you're spending to your potential. Right. That's a natural thing. Everybody does it.
Right.
The only difference between someone making 60 grand and someone making 260 grand is simply the things that they have. They don't have more money usually sitting around.
Right.
Because you're spending more money.
Right. Exactly.
And it just becomes that cycle. So the first piece of advice I would give is decide if it's something that is actually important to you. And if it's important enough, then start to seek the advice to make sure you're making first steps, and make sure those first steps are kind of congruent with the plan of what you want to do in your head. If you have somebody giving you investment advice or any type of financial advice, to be honest, without any background on knowing you or what your goals are or what
Mm-hmm.
you plan on doing with your life and your finances, then it's more bullshit than anything else.
Yeah,
Ooh,
no,
sorry.
100%. No, you're good. We're not monetized, so we're good. Yeah, no, you're fine. Yeah, and I think too, like, a lot of times, personal finance is something that there's obviously some, guidelines, right? Like, you gotta save, you want to save a little bit of money, right? You don't want to spend over what you're making, things like that, right? Basic principles. But I think that everyone's path is a little bit different to your point, right?
Without question.
And so if somebody is, let's say, the classic narrative is, oh, don't drink Starbucks coffee, right? Because, if you don't drink Starbucks coffee, you can save up for a down payment on a house, right? So, my take on that is like everyone has something that they enjoy doing, right? Mm-hmm. So whatever your hobby is or your thing is, right? It's okay to spend money on that thing as long as you're not spending money on everything, right? So,
Exactly.
have that, get that Starbucks coffee, right? Go, take that hot yoga class or whatever it is that you want to do, right? Go to the concerts that you want to go to, right? Have one or two things that you enjoy that brings you happiness so that it keeps you motivated to keep doing everything else. Because if you deprive yourself of the, experiences of life that you want to have, then what's the point in doing anything,
Exactly right. And I used to say this all the time. I'm not the money police here.
Right.
I'm not telling you don't spend money on stuff that you like to do.
Right.
What I would say is think of the opportunity cost of what you're spending, and if the emotional gratitude that you get or gratification that you get from, or physical, whatever it is, if it's an item or whatever, if that outweighs what you could have done with the money, as far as what that would bring you in the future, then buy it.
Right.
People want to, I think we get so wrapped up in things like, well, if you just didn't buy Starbucks every day and blah, 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 blah. I think there's that's more of a fallacy because listen, if I have an extra $6 in my pocket, or I don't even know how much a Starbucks
About
is.
$6.
$6, let's say. If I have an extra $6 a day in my pocket, unless my mentality is that $6 every day is going to add up to something, then it's meaningless anyways. Because who hasn't had, $30 in their pocket in cash and can't remember where they spent it?
Right.
Because it's in your pocket.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, here, I'll buy Girl Scout cookies or whatever it is. It's like, hey, if I have cash, it's flying out of my pocket.
Right.
That's a huge fallacy. People want to say that, oh, well, if you save this, you could buy this.
Right.
And it's like, no, if I save that, I'm going to spend it on something else that gives me less gratification, right?
Right.
So it all goes back to the point of, am I focused enough to see the things that I want, and am I disciplined enough to go after those things?
Right.
And that doesn't mean stop doing the things that you like to do, unless it's making you broke.
Right.
But it's more along the lines of be intentional with it. Be intentional with where your money goes and how often and what the returns on that money are, whether those are emotional returns or financial returns, and be okay with that decision.
Right.
I've never been one to be like, oh, well, you shouldn't do this and that. It's like, no, if it makes you happy, that's part of your daily routine. That's what keeps you functioning. That's what keeps you a smile on your face, or allows you to put a smile on somebody else's face. Then do that. That money is a tool,
right?
In the end,
right?
To be honest, it just is. It's not going to, it can't buy you love and happiness, but it can relieve or reduce stress that is around those types of things,
right?
But if there's no direction in your mind as to what you want to do with your money, then it really doesn't matter anyways.
Right. And like you said too, it's a really useful tool, right? It makes life easier because, it makes life way more convenient.
It gives
right?
you options.
It gives you options. It makes life more convenient. Like, if you miss your flight, like you can just get another flight or whatever it is, right? Like there's things that you can do, when you obviously have more money. But at the same time, though, it's not, probably the best thing to be like focusing on or idolizing, right? Because we both know, people that, that's all that they're focused on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I'd beg to argue that those are probably some of the most miserable people that I've ever met in my life.
I can't tell you. I can't even begin to tell you how much I agree with that statement.
Yeah.
And I think, people will see me as people that see me as a finance person will be very like side-eyed when I'll say something like that, very
Right.
similar to what you did.
Mm-hmm.
But it's an absolute fact.
Mm-hmm.
If everything that you're doing financially is based on the idea that you need to collect and hoard,
Mm-hmm.
as much of this, resource as possible, then it becomes more about the gathering and taking
Mm-hmm.
than it is about what it is for.
Right.
You see a lot of, and I would see this all the time. I would sit with somebody that had, $5 million, excuse me, $5 million, $10 million, sitting in their IRAs, and they're 65 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And they would come to me and ask me questions like, so you think I should, finance this Honda Civic for my son? I don't know if that's a good financial decision. I'm thinking, you could buy 50 of them if you want to.
Right.
But they were so connected
Mm-hmm.
to the number
Mm-hmm.
that they forgot that the number is a tool.
Right.
It's like building up, it's like having a truck and you need to drive it through the mountains to do your job or something. And so you build up this truck and it's 50 feet high, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it never leaves your house because you
Right.
don't do that job anymore, but you still want to keep the truck.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's like, if it's not a utility for you, then what the hell is it?
Right.
And that becomes an obsession because
Right.
unfortunately, money makes the world move,
Right.
and people find that to be an identity.
Right.
And that's why I think you see a lot of people that may have been very successful from a business standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
but often can tend to be very unsuccessful in matters of truth in life.
Right. Well, and that's exactly right too. I think that the types of, and again, money is not a bad thing. It's a very useful tool, right? And you want to plan to use it accordingly. But there's, if you have an unhealthy obsession with it, right, it's usually, at least from what I can potentially understand, is, it's an ego play, right? Mm-hmm. So it's, hey, I want to have more of this particular item than anybody else, right? Mm-hmm. This item being money in that case. And so I'm going to do everything possible to make as much money as I can, which, again, not inherently a bad thing.
Not inherently a bad thing, no.
But if that's what you're focusing on and it's an ego play, you're also pushing away other people at the same time, right? And as you push more people away, everyone's human. They're searching for a connection and an identity. Mm-hmm. And when there's no connection and your identity is in an object, whether that's money, a car, a house, whatever it is, mm-hmm. It becomes super lonely, right?
Without question.
And that's where you see, I think, a lot of like people that are, again, not saying all wealthy people are lonely, right? Because that's definitely not the case. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people that have an unhealthy obsession with money tend to be more lonely people.
Well, I think you made a great point there with trying to find an identity.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be honest, finding, who you are
mm-hmm.
through experiences and becoming the person that you want to be has nothing to do with money.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very easy way
mm-hmm.
to kind of, I don't know, cheat the system, if you will.
Right.
Like, I can have an identity. It'll be the rich guy.
Right.
And then and then you become somebody that you think the rich guy is.
Right.
Right. You start talking to people in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
You start expecting different things from people because
mm-hmm.
you're this thing now, where that
mm-hmm.
person at a certain point in their life is going to think to themselves like, who really am I?
Mm-hmm.
I've always just been this rich dude, this business guy, this successful whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but I have no stance on anything other than protecting my own money.
Right,
You
exactly.
know, there is no substance behind it.
Mm-hmm.
It's even a form of laziness when it comes to that. Like,
Yeah.
it's like a fallback. Like, yeah, I don't need to be anybody because I'm this guy. I'm this, you know, rich guy.
Right.
And a lot of people try and find identity
Mm-hmm.
in that. And I think that's why, because we're all, let's be honest, most of us are just normal people. We don't have a substantial amount of power,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
And power is something that people have craved since the beginning of time.
Right.
And money can get you power. It
Right.
doesn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
But when you start dealing in terms of big money, real money,
Mm-hmm.
that's when you'll see a lot of people realize, okay, I can manipulate this
Mm-hmm.
into positions of power.
Right.
I can bend people's wills
Mm-hmm.
because I have the capability to flash money in front of them that they've never seen.
Right.
And, you know, that's a very powerful thing to wield.
Right.
And unfortunately, I think that our obsession, especially in this country,
Mm-hmm.
with that power, I think that more often than not tends to corrupt people
Mm-hmm.
and make things that are normally not okay be okay.
Right. Exactly.
You know, like it's if I'm running a business that I started with 5 people, right,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's got 50,000 employees,
Mm-hmm.
and I, you know, standard corporate America, I need 10% increase every year,
Mm-hmm.
right? I might be worth $10 billion at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of allowing, let's say it's real estate, it's a down year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being like, all right, it's a down year in real estate, we're going through a little trend, we're going to be losing some profits here. Instead of understanding, okay, it might be more like 2% or a negative 10% this year. Instead of understanding that and kind of adapting to that, what power tends to do is protect the organization.
Right.
In a sense of, all right, I'll just lay off 10,000 people.
Right.
And then all the money that I should be paying them
Mm-hmm.
to my loyal employees
Mm-hmm.
now goes directly into my pocket.
Right.
And gets me closer to where I think I should be.
Right. Right.
You know, and from a basic humanitarian standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
like, that's not the right thing to do.
Right.
You
No,
know,
of course.
And I think that, you know, and yes, I'm not saying that business owners don't deserve to make money and this and this.
Of
I
course,
like to make
of course.
money.
Right. Absolutely.
I'm not going down that you know, rabbit hole. But what I am saying is the pursuit of money will undoubtedly give you options to, let's say, step out on your morals.
Mm-hmm.
And make decisions that you can justify based on money,
Right.
rather
Right.
than based on when you were that employee in the beginning.
Right. Right.
Those people don't matter at that point.
Right. Again, yeah, it's a super easy way to have an excuse, right?
Exactly.
Like you said, yeah, it's an easy way to have an excuse. And the other thing too is, you know, a lot of times, you know, in bigger organizations like that, I would imagine, you know, oh yeah, cool, we're going to lay off, you know, 10% of our labor force or whatever it is, right? But since they don't see those people or interact with those people on a daily basis, it's a lot easier to make that decision, right?
It's much easier to pull the trigger from behind a computer screen.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
It's much different when the person's standing right in front of you.
Right.
And you know, that's it's unfortunate that it works that way, but you know, it is what it is.
Yeah, that's, you know, part of how the world turns, unfortunately.
Right. So, and that goes back to really like some advice that I would give to somebody that is starting out,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be don't things are going to happen that you might not understand,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your company might go in a direction where they tell you, all right, you have to start doing this, and this,
Mm-hmm.
and you might think, well, that's not going to help the customer, or that's not going to help me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very easy because you're not going to get an explanation of, this is why we're doing this. And just take Chase, for example. It would go down from the highest up to there, to there, to there, and spread out to all the people. And a lot of times I'm like, oh, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would they do this? Why would they do that? And totally doesn't make sense. But somewhere it makes sense to them.
Right.
And I spent a lot of time when I was young in my career trying to figure that out,
mm-hmm.
and try to, this isn't the right way, where I don't know the reasons that those decisions are made. And even if they were made for the wrong reasons, which is highly likely,
right,
it's not like my righteousness is going to turn around corporate America, right? So if you're choosing to get into, that type of position, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I thought Chase was an amazing company.
Yeah.
But that's the route you take, and you find yourself, working for a bigger company. Understand that there's certain battles that you can fight,
mm-hmm.
and certain battles that you shouldn't.
Right.
And understanding the difference in the two. Because to be successful there, you need to be able to work inside the confines of somebody else's plan.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I like that too, because everyone, you want to have some individuality, some personality, right,
mm-hmm.
in what you bring to the company you work for, because that's why they're hiring you.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, like you said,
hope.
One would hope, right? But at the same time, you have to, also play nice in the sandbox and
mm-hmm.
do what you're supposed to be doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last question I had for you here is, you are definitely one of the more successful people that I know in the area. You have a lot of, credibility behind you. You've been through a lot of different things, right? Yet you are also one of the most down-to-earth people that I know. Like,
thank you. I appreciate that.
We can't, and that's what I picked up on, like, the first time that I met you, right? That's why we've been as quickly as friends as we became, and why we hung out, as often as we have. So, how does that happen, right? Because everyone thinks like, oh, if someone's successful, or if they've held these different positions or whatever it is, they're just going to be, like a prick, right?
Right, sure.
And so how do you, that's something that I've kind of drawn off of you, and I'm like, okay, well, as I'm advancing in my career, I want to make sure that I stay, grounded, stay humble, stay, a real person, right? Mm-hmm. What do you attribute to that part of your personality?
That's a great question. I mean, the first thing I guess would be, I've been fortunate to live on both sides of the economic spectrum, if you will. Mm-hmm. I didn't grow up rich. Mm-hmm. I was driving an '88 Nissan that was, I think, $800, and then a '85 Toyota Corolla that had the front bumper. I think, what do you call the cords?
Like the jumper cables or whatever?
No, the ones that hook on.
Like a bungee cord or something?
Yeah. It was bungeed on the front of the car. So I've experienced that, and I've also experienced, being in a situation where I didn't have to worry about the things that a lot of people worry about. Now, I was never at a point where I was making laughable amounts of money.
Sure.
But, I'm a single guy, mm-hmm. and, you're making in the six figures, mm-hmm. and it's pretty simple at that point from a financial standpoint.
Right.
But I think the reason, and I appreciate you saying that, because it's something that I'm very cognizant of, is it doesn't matter what you have, I guess. Mm-hmm. It's all about, for me, what it makes me feel like. And mm-hmm. I don't think I've ever spent a day in my life thinking that someone else that I was superior to somebody else.
Right.
Whether it be because you have more money than them, or you have a better situation, or whatever. I see things in a much different light than a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Power isn't necessarily something that I've ever seeked. Mm-hmm. it's not, that's not the fulfilling side. The fulfilling side for me is sitting with somebody like you that I see tons of potential in,
Mm-hmm.
even in areas that you may not see yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to kind of help mold that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, to be honest, I think what really what makes me kind of tick and think the way that I think is when I was growing up, I never thought certain things were possible.
Right.
And I don't remember people saying that they were,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but I think even if people did say, oh, you can do this, I never actually believed them.
Right.
Right. I remember when I went to Purdue, I wasn't a good student in high school. And some people after college were like, what do you mean? But I didn't try, you know.
Right.
I remember going to Purdue thinking, I'm not the guy that graduates, you know. I'm not the guy that has a 3.5 GPA. I can't do this. I can't do that. I can't do that. And I remember getting into their Krannert School of Management. And to be honest, the only reason I was in the Krannert School of Management was because I had a 3.8 GPA after my freshman year.
Wow.
And my advisor was like, why don't you try getting into management? I was like, oh, that's too hard. She's like, what do you mean it's too hard? You have a 3.8.
Right.
Most freshmen have like a 1.5.
Yeah.
And I was like, I won't be able to pass. I won't be able to pass. She's like, I think you should just try it. And I was like,
yeah.
All right. And that's how I got into the business school. And
yeah.
They accepted me in the whole thing. But I never actually had the mentality of, I can do this. I would
right.
see people with Ferrari or these
mm-hmm.
types of things. And I would think, like, instead of thinking what steps did they take to get there,
mm-hmm.
I saw that step being a mountain.
Right.
And being like, that's those people,
right.
not these people.
Right.
And it's absolutely imperative, if you want to be successful in business and in life, to understand that thought process, while valid,
mm-hmm.
is completely in your own mind.
Oh, absolutely.
And it took me a very long time and a lot of different mentors and a lot of different great people that I got an opportunity to work with to make me realize, like, oh, it's not like, these aren't special people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, you ever, I used to think this all the time. I thought, you know, if I saw somebody that had this kind of money or was this successful, I thought they must be a genius.
Mm-hmm.
They must, you know, have all of this stuff going for them.
Right.
And then you get in the same room with those people. The older you get and the more successful you get, and you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, this guy is the same as me.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly.
Or even worse, you're like, this person is dumb as hell.
Oh yeah.
And
no,
like,
exactly.
How did this happen? And I think that there was a shift at some point in my mind, and it made me realize, no, that was in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And you can be up here and maybe even more deservingly than maybe someone else. In those terms, when you're thinking about those terms, and it's like you might have studied more or done more or whatever, but realize that when you get to that point, you're still no different.
Right.
And that was a moment, I think, in my life where I was like, oh, so it doesn't matter where I'm at or how much I'm making. It's how I'm doing what I'm doing and how I feel about myself when I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And do I believe that if there is something else I want to do, I'm capable of doing it?
Right, exactly. And I think it's also too, you know, the fact that, like, you know, I know you and I both have a lot of the same, you know, very similar backgrounds, right? Where we both didn't grow up with a whole lot, and then we both, you know, have, you know, you've made something of yourself. I'm in the process of doing the same thing, right? And, you know,
I think you've done all right. We're in a beautiful house right now. Shoot, you just had your 17th birthday.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you're doing all right.
I'm taking my learner's permit test tomorrow. No, you know, but it's funny because, like, we've had both sides of the coin, right? Mm-hmm. And so we both have seen other people go through, you know, like being super successful, and then it all burns to the ground, mm-hmm. right? And I think that, for me at least, it's, a fear that I have in the back of my head, right? Is that, oh, this could all go away tomorrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's, obviously every fear is somewhat healthy because it protects you and keeps you motivated and stuff like that. But also it's one of those things that kind of guides, I feel like some interactions that I have where, you never know who you're interacting with, right?
Mm-hmm.
You never know who that person knows. And, you never know who's going to be the next big thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your day may be up tomorrow, right? So how you treat somebody else, even if it's, the attendant at the gas station, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not worth any less than the richest person that you know, right? As a human being.
Precisely.
Right? And so that's where, you like I feel like you and I are both on that same level where like, you treat everyone with respect as a individual person.
Sure. Because
Obviously,
money is a concept.
right, exactly.
Money is simply a concept that we've constructed to allow for the exchange of goods.
Right.
And unfortunately, it grew to a point when people started to realize, ooh, the more I have of this, the more I can make people bend to my will.
Right.
It grew to a point where it became a way to then divide people.
Right.
Because we're herd.
Mm-hmm.
We're a herd race, if you will. Like
right.
as human beings, we're herd animals,
Mm-hmm.
and we like to have different categories.
Mm-hmm.
These people are like, remember in high school, it's like, oh, those are the jocks, and those are the nerds, and those are the whatever, different kinds of groups or whatnot.
Well, keep in mind, my graduating class was one, so.
Yeah,
remember?
That's right. So think back of...
Because I was homeschooled.
Right. Think of the books you read about
yes.
high school. And,
I remember watching like Gospel Girl one time.
90210. But I think we have a tendency to try and get into groups because it gives us a sense of belonging.
Right.
Then we start to look at other groups, and if we want to, I guess, either impress upon them that we are the group to be in, or
mm-hmm.
that your group is not the group to be in, because that somehow challenges my standing as myself.
Right, exactly.
And I've never really, in my adult life, I started to see these things as like, what the hell are we doing?
Right.
It's so intellectually lazy
mm-hmm.
to just grab onto something and be like, yep, this is what I believe in, or this is what the cool thing is, or this is, when it's like, okay, that's fine, but that doesn't mean that that's not.
Right.
Or that's not.
Right.
Or that's not right for that person, or,
right,
or all these different things. And I think that we get to be so ingrained or so like involved in whatever it is that we're trying to be,
mm-hmm.
that we forget that every single other person is on that exact same journey as we are.
Mm-hmm.
And whether they're finding more or less success finding themselves, it has nothing to do with you and your success as a person.
Right.
It doesn't challenge me or my belief in me
mm-hmm.
when you are successful.
Right.
And absolutely. A lot of people don't understand that.
Right.
If you and I are doing the exact same thing, and you are doing extremely well, and mm-hmm. I am doing pretty well,
mm-hmm.
why would your success threaten me?
Right, of course.
But immediately you start to see people, oh, they don't do this right. Start chopping legs out from underneath them.
Right.
Because somehow your gain in your financial life challenges my identity and my idea of who I am.
Right.
And that's not something that I choose to. That's not a game I ever want to play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if I am confident and happy with who I am,
mm-hmm.
or I'm even, I'm just comfortable with who I am, go make your money, man. Or go do whatever is going to make you the most successful version of you. But I'm not going to let that threaten what I think about me.
Right.
And an example is simply what you said. You kind of worry sometimes that I could wake up tomorrow and this could be gone. And as bad as that would be, and as difficult as that would be financially, my question to you is, if you woke up tomorrow and all this was gone,
mm-hmm.
would you still be the same person?
It's a really good question.
And if that answer is no, then maybe you might want to take a step back and assess what it actually is that you're looking for.
Right.
Because if you would not be the same person if you didn't have this beautiful house and a lifestyle the way you have it, if you feel like you would be a different person, then too much of who you are is wrapped up in a tangible thing that you can't really control when it comes down to it.
Right.
And, to bring it, I guess, full circle, why am I, I guess not as greedy as some or not as, like that in life? It comes down to exactly that. Because I think I look at it maybe from a little bit higher perspective and am able to see a bigger picture than someone that is still choosing to just be right in it and in the grind and constantly every penny, and I'll cut this person's leg off for a quarter. That's not, it's a tough life. And yeah, you see the spoils of it. You see, people's yachts and this and whatever. And you also see them at the end of the night looking around being like, do I have any real friends?
Right.
Why are all 80 of these people here? What are they going to ask me for?
Right.
Constantly on the defensive. And that's just not something I ever wanted to experience. To me, it's like, hey, if I have all this, success, I want to show you or share it with you or do something that is going to brighten society as a whole, because that's what's going to make me feel like I did something.
Right, of course. Yep, absolutely. And like you said, bringing it to, the people that are going to affect you, right? So like, you are bringing it to the world and it gives you more joy that way. Not having 80, jackasses on a boat with you.
Right.
Like
all just looking at me and I'm just going, yeah, this is me. I paid for this. I did this. And it's like, yeah, that's cool, I guess, for 5 seconds.
Right.
But if that's why you're doing everything that you're doing, which you see all the time,
right?
This boisterous attitude, this
right.
Everybody look at me, don't forget about me, kind of mentality. What is it for, though?
Right. Exactly.
It's all show.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, I'd rather have one friend that actually gave a shit about who I was and wants to spend time with me than 5,000 friends that were like, yeah, I'll be around you. Exactly. Yeah, let's go over here.
Yeah,
so they can be like, hey, guess what? I know this guy, whatever. Like,
right.
It's everybody's vying for a position that doesn't exist.
Right.
And when you get to that position, is the time when you realize, oh shit, this does not exist.
Yeah.
Like I thought. Like, you're just still another person. Yeah. You just have more assets and more things to utilize than somebody else. But in this country, that makes for a huge gap between how we treat people and how we think of people. Right. When in reality, it makes absolutely no difference.
Right. It doesn't make a difference with connection, for sure.
Right. And I've said this so many times, like when I've had kind of, deeper conversations with people, I'd say, the things that we see in life when we group ourselves together, whether it be money or race or sex or sexual orientation or whatever it is, right? If you put all of us on a ship, let's say, or on a deserted island, let's say it's on a ship, right? And that ship is, on the water or whatever, but in 2 weeks, let's say the world was flat. It's going to fall off the end of the earth, right?
Right.
And there's 100 people on this ship. And you have one person from every single different background and diversity and whatever, rich people and poor people, whatever. On that ship, none of that matters.
Yeah.
And that's what life is, because let's be honest, we are all on a ship that eventually is going to fall off the earth or whatever. What are we doing? It should be basic common sense, basic human interactions that prove this to us every day, that what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if someone is standing next to me, and this ship is going this way and we're in trouble, I'm going to look at that person and be like, hey, how can we figure this out? And I'm like, oh, well, you only made 40 grand a year, so let me go find the rich guy.
Right,
like,
right.
Or whatever, you know, could be any other, you know, scenario there. But it's like, there has to be a point when you realize like, oh, this is the basis of what's real. Right. Everything else is the cloud that we've put up to allow myself to believe I'm better than you, right, or different than you. And I don't chase those things because I don't want to be different from you. I want to be an individual. I'm very individualistic in the sense of where, you know, I believe in certain things, and I don't want to just be one of the crowd, but I'm not going to use an arbitrary unit of measurement to allow myself to think or to justify that I'm better than anybody else. I think that's quite reductive in just the process, the thought process itself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, awesome.
Cavemanish.
There you go. Very, very, like you said, intellectually lazy.
Precisely.
100%.
Precisely. It's a great way to put it.
Awesome. Well, Patrick, I appreciate you coming on.
I had a great time.
This is definitely the longest podcast we've actually recorded.
Well,
straight up. So
I hope people, you know, made it after longer than 15 seconds.
There we go. I think they will for sure. But no, seriously, I appreciate you coming on here. So yeah, I will link to like the socials that you have in the description too. So you know, if you're in the industry, you want to follow Patrick, definitely give him a holler. So,
yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me, John.